Served in two battalions of the regiment. I first joined the 1st Battalion of the 2nd East Anglian Regiment back in 1964 and spent most of my service with the 2nd Battalion or on other jobs. But my last tour was with the 3rd Battalion. And when we went to Northern Ireland in 1974 as the commander of HQ Company, with not a lot to do in that sort of situation, I was made the Community Relations Officer and the Public Relations Officer. So it fell to me to look after a young lady who was persuaded by the public relations organisations to become Miss Pompadour. She came over to the Cregan in 1974 and I then had to escort her around to not only the Cregan but to Fort George, where the other half of the battalion was, and introduce her around to soldiers, officers and so on. When I was in Cyprus in 1966, early in the year, I had the good fortune to have a three-week course at the Lebanese Army Ski School, with the idea that what I would do when I came back would be to go up to the Troodos and help soldiers to do adventure training. Unfortunately, something happened in Northampton. I've never been quite able to discover what. And suddenly, at very short notice, about 3 weeks after I got back from Lebanon, I found myself in Northampton commanding 16 Army Youth Team. Army Youth Teams were designed to put the Army in a good light as far as the youth of the country are concerned. And they were attached to, usually, to recruiting officers. Peter Kiley, who ran the recruiting office in Northampton, was my immediate boss, and I lived with the Royal Pioneer Corps at their depot in Simpson Barracks, which had been a Northampton's barracks before, I believe. The job was really to go out in the evenings mainly to youth clubs and to Army Cadet Force units, and to help them to enjoy themselves. So we had a trampoline, we had lots of games equipment, and we just used to take over the youth club for an evening. And there were a number of youth clubs all over Northampton, which we used to visit fairly regularly. In 1975, I decided I wanted to leave the army and just had to find something for myself to do. I fixed on a course at Plymouth College of Art and Design, which was audio-visual techniques for education, which is a hell of a mouthful, but involved photography, graphics, film and television, and was aimed to help teachers to create teaching aids, which, as everybody knows, in the army you get plenty of practice at when you have to teach people how to do things. And I went down to Plymouth from Catterick. I actually arrived on the course 3 weeks late because in the past I'd recently done the Long Armour Infantry course and signed on for 3 years, and they wouldn't let me go to start with, but I left. And I arrived on the course 3 weeks late. I'd actually been there about 2 days before people realised that this retired major that they were expecting on the course had arrived. I think they were expecting somebody in a tweed jacket and a little peppercorn moustache, and I was sitting in the corner with my jeans and sweater on, and it wasn't until I explained it that people realised I was there. The course was very interesting. I really enjoyed the whole of the time I was there. I was obviously the oldest person on the course, although there was one who was only a couple of months younger than me, and he'd been a corporal in the had just left the RAF as a corporal, and it was quite interesting that they felt that it was probably one of the best years they'd had on the course, because both Richard and I got down and started doing the work that we were required to do on projects straight away, and people suddenly realised that we were getting better marks than they were simply because we got our work in on time. But that's an indication of the training one gets, I suppose. Towards the end of the course, I got very interested in audio-visual aids for museums. I'd done some work with the local curator at the Plymouth Museum, and they had very little activity, as far as I was aware, in using audiovisual aids within the museum. Remembering this is back in 1975, 76, 78. And so she and I decided that it would be a good idea if there was a small booklet which people could have in order to know more about audiovisual aids. So my final major project at the college was a book on audiovisual techniques for museums, which ran through the whole gamut from tape slide presentations to simple graphics to signing and all those sorts of things. And in those days, museums weren't really clued in to that sort of stuff, and the book went down very well. I think in the end we produced about 500 of them, which we sent out to museums and so on that the curator knew of through an organisation that she was involved with, and we got a lot of good reports back, which didn't do my career my graduation very much harm at all. And this is the book that I produced. And it covered all sorts of things from copyright problems, photography, tape slide presentations, television, all the sorts of things that many museums at that time weren't using, mainly because they didn't know enough about them.